Okay, again, it's impossible to know where to begin, but I'm going to try to give this episode 2 of this fork countdown with me, Paul Stortz. And we're going to talk a little about Coldcard and then talk a little bit about the two forks coming up. And then I'm going to talk about this thing, the Bitcoin Endgame, which is of enormous importance. It's impossible to process all the Coldcard stuff in real time. But I saw a great tweet from Predator where he says correctly that the Bitcoin only movement has become effectively an affinity scam. Affinity scam is when someone goes to like a group of Christians, for example, and they say, oh, I'm a Christian like you, blah, blah, blah. And then they raise money. They prey on similarities between people to scam them. And Predator is right. And even everything that, for example, Michael Saylor does is just I'll show up, I'll I'll say all the Bitcoin phrases and I'll trick these people into liking me, and then I will just take all of their money for myself. And you're left with something that's not related to Bitcoin at all. For example, the treasury companies, they buy the Bitcoin and they give you worthless piece of paper that they can print. They give you literally fiat in return, and they own the Bitcoin and you don't. But yeah, Predator said also that NVK is the Corey Clipston of hardware wallets. So I thought that was a hilarious joke. Corey is another corrupt, sociopathic liar, of which there are many. And I don't know. It's impossible to dwell on the Coldcard issue because it has so many facets. But as more information comes out, it does seem as though the hack would not have occurred if NVK had just kept using the same, if they had just maintained the same open source library that everyone else was using instead of trying to fraudulently misrepresent themselves as some new different project that deserves some kind of intellectual property protection or whatever. Um, I don't know. I'll maybe if people ask, I'll have more specific thoughts. But it does. A lot of the things I suspected seem to be happening. One thing that I was absolutely shocked and surprised by is the sheer number of people who, for some reason, thought that this was a good idea or that NVK was a psychologically normal and trustworthy person. You can see if you go onto my Twitter, you'll see I have compiled like a few links of people saying this over the years that this person is a nut, and our entire industry is critically reliant on open source. So I don't know. Now about these two forks. Okay, so I think they have a lot of similarities, but they're also opposite in many ways. So both ecash.com fork and the 110 fork both have some kind of problem with Bitcoin. Both think that a Bitcoin core is corrupt or at least can be easily improved. The problem is the 110 fork has a terrible strategy that's going to fail, and it's going to legitimize core even further after they're humiliated. And in fact, when they fail on August 9th, they will at that point realize that they have just barely caught up to where the eCash fork was like 12 months previously from now. So they haven't even caught up to 1 year out, but they will, because then they'll be in the position of trying to organize a hard fork, and they have to pick a name, and you have to pick something like where's the GitHub repo going to be and what is the domain name. And so for eCash, that's ecash.com, and the GitHub is ecash-com because you don't have dots in those. Really, the 110 one wants to moralize and shrink the number of transactions. Whereas, of course, BIP 300 wants to say, live and let live, do whatever you like as long as it doesn't harm someone else. And we want to maximize the number of transactions. We want to expand if you want a large block L2, if you want a privacy L2, if you want an L2 that has snarks, if you want an L2 that has covenants, whatever, you can do that. So I think they're quite opposite in those ways, which brings me to my next point, which is how could eCash possibly be better than Bitcoin Core? After all, Bitcoin Core does all this stuff. There was a different tweet recently. I'll link to it, but the tweet was about all the work that has been going into Bitcoin Core, which of course a lot of it is valuable, even though it's mostly pretentious and it's done for show, and it's not, the mempool stuff is to support a bunch of stuff that won't go anywhere. So it's a big malinvestment. But how could, what, I'm going to build like a whole thing that will compete? No, that's not the strategy at all with eCash. Not at all. The eCash L1 is going to be Bitcoin Core. It will be Bitcoin Core V31, and then when they change it to do whatever, add whatever stupid bullshit they want to add in 32 and 33 and 34, the eCash L1 will just copy all of that. And so it will be every single thing that you like about Bitcoin plus more stuff. But the stuff is the plus, both elements are important, keeping everything the same and adding the new stuff. So you won't lose anything by technologically by going to the eCash fork. You still get all the junk that Bitcoin Core is going to do, and all the CVE fixes and stuff. How do we activate new soft forks in eCash? Well, there's this thing called QSIF, the Core Untouched soft fork, which instead of editing the lines of code in the L1 node, you have a second node that's very similar that checks only the new rules. And instead of calling invalidate block inside the C++ logic, it just calls invalidate block as an RPC. A lot of people maybe don't know because invalidate block is one of the hidden RPCs. They sort of deleted it from the help menu. But it is a critical RPC that, especially in times of crisis, and it's for testing, and it's a very, very useful RPC. And in this case, it can activate soft forks as long as you have 51% hash rate support. So that's how we have our cake and eat it too. We're going to have everything that Bitcoin Core is. That would be a very foolish thing to try to compete with the entirety of the Bitcoin Core. This was NVK's problem. But instead, we're just going to copy all the L1 from Bitcoin Core and add a few other things. So this is BIP 300, 301. I believe that by the time, very soon and by the August launch, there'll be a second QSIF that actually adds quantum resistant signature options, as well as probably OpCat and OpCTV. So that would be the QSIF number 2. You can read all about this if you want at bip300qsif.com. So you have everything that Bitcoin Core is, plus better L1 stuff, plus better, the Bitwindow is much better than Bitcoin Knots, for example. And Bitwindow is much better than the GUI in Bitcoin Core. And the idea behind Bitwindow is that it will just absorb everything. It'll just absorb every option that you like from everything from like Sparrow and whatever, just combine everything into one place, one very opinionated. So then not only that, you get all these L2s. And this setup alone, even if nothing was shipped, this setup alone would be invaluable. It would be more valuable than Core, because it means that if the developers do something wrong, if they make a mistake, if they go too slow, if they go too fast, if whatever, you can always escape onto a new L2. And even if you have 53 L2s, if you have all of them, then and they're all bad, then you can make a 53rd. So a process that can survive mistakes and recover from error is in a completely different league than a process that cannot. I should also say that some of the L2s that we've already shipped are like, scaling to 8 billion people, Zcash level, super privacy. We have shipped actually something like 7 or 8. More are coming out all the time. And all of them are much better than, for example, Lightning, for example, CoinJoin. So everything we do is much better than what other people have. It's hard to. That's how is eCash going to be better than Bitcoin? It's actually easy, because we're going to tie on everything, and then in a few ways we're just going to be better. In particular, we'll offer additional, freedom to build new things, and people have already built many things that are better. I realize it's a very large claim. And of course, I also realize that having the best technology, or even the best product, or even the best user experience, that is not enough to win. But we don't need to be enough to win. We just need to be enough to zap everything with a cattle prod and get everyone to actually come to their senses. Because if you read the derangements post that I mentioned in the last post, you realize actually and this Coldcard issue is an example of this. We have a bunch of, so is Predator's tweet. It's a perfect tweet because it speaks to this cancerous effect of people just saying, you know what, instead of caring about the facts, I'm just going to care about something being Bitcoin only. So yeah, I mean, if you support any of this stuff, Michael Saylor, Swan, Coldcard, you will regret it. It's all this stuff is garbage. So now point number 2, Bitcoin Endgame. Okay, this refers to getting to 8 billion users and why it's a matter of life or death. So you can imagine that imagine you come up to a cliff and you have to climb, there's a bunch of ladders and you have to climb to the top. You have to make it to the top. Now, some of the ladders one of the ladder goes 100% of the way to the top, but you don't know which one it is. One goes 99%, one goes 80%, one goes only 10% of the way of the top. Now, you see, it doesn't matter if it goes 99% or 10%. It's all or nothing. You get up to the last rung and you realize, oh, I can't reach the top from here. I have to climb all the way back down. In fact, it's worse because it's a malinvestment. But what is this analogy supposed to mean? Well, basically, the last rung of the ladder is having 8 billion users. These are people who switch not because of number go up, but they switch in order to be a user. This is the last rung. Because by the time we get to the 99th, by the time we get one single rung away from the top, the price will already have gone up to its maximum value. So those people cannot switch because it will have gone up in anticipation of the users adopting. So it will already hit 100% of its maximum value. You could also look at these, this ladder as a metaphor for example, orders of magnitude of the price. So you could say like 1 cent, 10 cents, $1. And you could even, if you wanted to, maybe I'll make an infographic about this. You could say like, okay, this is how the price of Bitcoin when people thought it was a joke or they didn't really understand if it was real or not. This is the price of Bitcoin. Oh, it's after $1. Oh, after you have Silk Road, you have this. After you get recognition on cover of Financial Times, you can get to $100. So you're climbing the ladder each time. $100, $1,000, $10,000 per coin. And then we'll max out somewhere around 10, 20 million. That's the last rung of the ladder. And the point I'm trying to emphasize is that it doesn't matter if you're 10% or 99%, both of those are Ponzi schemes. Because both of those will end up, 0 people will end up getting to the top that way. So when you climb the ladder and the price goes up, the price is being purchased in anticipation of its future utility. Maybe that is kind of an abstract sounding sentence. But when the price goes up, it's rewarding all the people who bought before. They get 10x their net worth. They made a bet that Bitcoin would be useful, and Bitcoin made it to the next stage, so they were rewarded. And it's very much similar to a corporation, where the corporation can increase in value before it ever makes a profit, because they can say, well, you know what, we will make a profit. I know that we haven't made one yet, but we've proven that our product works. We've proven that there's demand for it. So each time you get closer, and it doesn't matter if it's 99 or 10%. So the last piece is all or nothing. It's critical because when you go up the rungs and you're near the top, you now are in a situation where if that person can't make it, each person's paying off the previous person, So it's like if that person can't make it, person on the N-1 rung, they don't get number go up, which again, the final person cannot, because it will already be at its maximum price. I'm worried that this is too abstract and theoretical, but hopefully it's not. Imagine 50% of the population invests in Bitcoin right before 100%. The 50%, the exchange rate will go up because they think the last 100% will adopt. But by then it will be too late for the other people to get a return, for them to get any number go up. They have to adopt it to use it. Now, if they don't, then it means that those people will never get a number go up. They won't get NGU. So then they will turn away disappointed. And this will mean that the price will actually have to start falling back down. Each person will, it'll unwind the same way that it wound up, because people instead, they bought it for number go up, but instead it'll be number go down or number stay flat. Makes no difference. They won't be getting what they want. Even numbers stay flat is no good because you're missing out on opportunity costs. You're missing out. You have inflation. You could have invested in AI or whatever, S&P 500. So flat is no good. Down is no good. And then the whole thing will unwind the way. So it doesn't matter if we get 40% of the way there or 10% or 99%. The last rung is all or nothing. In conversely, if you can guarantee that you get the last rung, if you can guarantee that one day 8 billion people will use this, well, then you will speed run all the other rungs. It will go from being worth nothing to being worth $15 million per coin. So with all that out of the way, you can see how the focus of the eCash hard fork is completely on whether or not it's possible to get 8 billion users. And that is the only relevant dimension. And now, of course, some people will why would people use things for different reasons? And I completely agree that you want a small block L1, that you want it to be decentralized, censorship resistant. You want to have strong privacy in there. You want it to be very cypherpunk. You want it to respect people's property rights. So all of that's great. And Bitcoin is correct to have small block size on L1. It's correct to scale in layers. But there's been a disturbing lack of prioritization of Bitcoin being adopted on its features, being adopted for real, people really caring about user-friendly self-sovereignty. So it has to be easy to use and it has to be sovereign. So all this is essential. It's not just essential in a kind of talking point, guy on stage with a PowerPoint way. It's just literally essential. If we get that, then it's $15 million, $25 million per coin, and Bitcoin will exist forever. But if we don't get that, then it's guaranteed that Bitcoin will be worth zero. Or it'll be just some kind of niche thing that is like a little toy. I probably would not be worth $100,000 per coin in that case. It would be just some novelty. But I think one coin will win. And the key will just be who can meet the needs of the users the most and satisfy the needs of the paranoid users and the experimental users and the liberal users and the conservative users. So that's what it is. It's a race to 8 billion. And if NVK and Michael Saylor are the best you got in BTC, it's not going to be that difficult to win.